As halftime approached, you could feel the tension crackling through the tunnel like static electricity. One of the most intense quarters in Indiana Fever history had just concluded. However, things weren't quite as coordinated in the dressing room. With her jaw tight and her eyes like daggers, Caitlin Clark charged at the bench. With her clipboard in hand, Coach Stephanie White trailed closely behind and attempted to provide instructions above the din of the crowd. Then it took place. The intensity was evident even though the words were not captured by the cameras. Clearly irritated, Clark whirled around in mid-step and confronted fairly squarely. Even the assistant coaches froze in place as she shook her head, gestured to the court, and snapped something. It wasn't dramatic. It was genuine. This wasn't a showy meltdown by a diva. This was a top-tier rival who demanded leadership, independence, and transparency. Subscribe now if you want to see the unfiltered version of the story rather than the filtered one. You should absolutely subscribe if you plan to stay for the next meltdown. You can immediately see that Clark is not someone who sugarcoats things if you follow her career, from the crowded college arenas in Iowa to the record-breaking Wnba crowds. She plays with the zeal of someone attempting to change the rules in real time, and she is outspoken and straightforward. This was different, though, at this particular moment. It was more significant than a single poor quarter or a skipped rotation. It concerned the Fever's future and whether or not Caitlin Clark would be allowed to be herself in this franchise. To be honest, Clark didn't join the Wnba to be a supporting cast member. She didn't light up college basketball for 4 years just to be ignored or instructed to slow down so someone else could dribble the clock down. Fans are paying to watch her because of her style, which includes rapid threes, no-look passes, and speedy breaks that begin with a rebound. However, she has been treading carefully ever since arriving in Indiana. On the one hand, you have the traditional way of thinking, low-scoring slugfests, grinded-out possessions, and constructed setups designed to help veterans who have been in the league for 10 years. Coach White is at ease in the situation. She is not interested in 35-foot branding shots or ostentatious transitional crossings. She is here to maintain control, discipline, and run plays through the veterans. Conversely, up-tempo, chaos, pace, space offense, and creative flexibility are all part of Clark's vision for the game. She is revolutionary rather than careless. And she was screaming enough with her snap at halftime. One could say that it has been developing for some weeks. The mis-cuts, the delayed rotations, the plays in which Kelsey Mitchell dribbled into a contested mid-range shot as Clark was completely iced out. Clark's annoyance went beyond his feelings. It was calculated. The system is holding her back like sandbags on a rocket ship as she reads the floor 3 steps ahead. Everything had changed at the beginning of the third quarter. With a completely different attitude and fury in her eyes, Clark emerged. It was as if she were flipping a switch. She made 3 deep threes in less than 5 minutes, transitioning from playmaker to assassin. Coach White remained silent as the audience went nuclear and sat on the bench. It was obvious. The team had improved since Clark took command. The ball started to move all of a sudden. Colleagues were purposefully screening and cutting more forcefully. Opening up at last, Natasha Howard, who had been stiff-arming the offense, began to flow with Clark's pace. Perhaps sensing the change, Kelsey Mitchell offered Clark a transition assist instead of pushing shots. As a result, the squad appeared to be a postseason contender rather than a mid-tier jumble after a 30-point quarter. Naturally, the press conference following the game was a maze. Coach White gave a typical response: "We changed things." Without acknowledging what had obviously happened on national television, the team said, "Well, it was a good second-half effort, no mention of the confrontation." She didn't dance around it, though, Clark. With steady gaze, she added, "We're trying to build something here. And sometimes that means having difficult talks because we want to prevail. My goal is to prevail. I'm not here to be polite. I am here to take the lead. And you know what? She's not incorrect. The Fever must give her the keys and move aside if they hope to prevail. She is more than just their top scorer. She is their best communicator, floor general, passer, and, ultimately, their best opportunity to develop a contemporary identity. The Wnba is changing. Speed, spacing, and star power are taking the place of the old techniques. Clark is everything and more. That change won't be simple, though. Veterans who believe they have paid more dues are still present in that locker room. There are still coaches who think that safety comes from organization. There are still those in the media who believe Clark's self-assurance is conceit. Here's the thing, though dynasties are not built on hesitation. They are built on vision, bravery, and allowing the culture to be shaped by your greatest players. And what's at stake here is culture. Play calls and stat lines aren't the only things involved. The question is whether the Indiana Fever are prepared to become the team that rides with Caitlin Clark into the future, or whether they want to be a team mired in mediocrity, a combination of old-fashioned tactics and veteran egos. The decision has been made by the fans. Her name is chanted in the arena. The merchandise is flying off the shelves. Every time the ball is in her hands, ESPN cuts to her responses. She is a revolution, not simply a novice. Every revolution begins with a moment similar to the halftime explosion, when the star finally expresses what everyone has been thinking aloud. It's enough. I'll run it. What transpired during halftime was merely a spark, however. A much larger issue is currently gaining traction. There is a simmering issue in Indiana and throughout the league. To be clear, Caitlin Clark wasn't simply speaking for herself when she yelled at her coach. She was speaking on behalf of all athletes who have ever been prevented from reaching their full potential by a system that is too inflexible. For every novice who is expected to follow orders rather than take initiative, and for every star who is instructed to follow orders rather than take the lead. There is more going on here than just a power battle. In women's basketball, a culture war between tradition and change is just getting started. Stephanie is an example of a generation of coaches who used a one-size-fits-all playbook, discipline, and repetition to build their methods. To be fair, that strategy was successful in the early 2000s. When a league was battling for consistency and visibility, it worked. In the past, minimizing errors seemed to be the way to get credibility, but the 2025 Wnba is a different story. Fans demand more than simply effectiveness. They're looking for flair. Stars are what they desire. They want 30-foot daggers that light up Twitter in real time, as well as speed and attitude. They want to experience emotion once more. And Caitlin Clark consistently evokes that emotion. She is not a flawless athlete. She is not perfect. Even ardent admirers hold their breath when she takes heat check shots. You know what else she does, though? As soon as the ball comes into contact with her hands, she applies pressure on defenses. Before they arrive, she sees passes. She improves performance for opponents, teammates, and the league at large. And that's why this coaching conflict is so important. It has nothing to do with disrespect. It has to do with alignment. Caitlin Clark is currently performing like a generational star confined to a role-playing framework. Additionally, it is evident in the game's rhythm as well as in the body language. The offense falters as the tempo slows. Another possession dies in a corner, leaving Clark standing with his palms up. Furthermore, this isn't just one game, unlike what you might believe. There is a trend here. The gap between a visionary and an organization that is too cautious to keep up is slowly growing. Let's now discuss the locker room because the video transcript makes it evident that not everyone is prepared for the Clark era. This team has players, particularly veterans, who believe they should have the authority to make decisions. For years, Kelsey Mitchell, for instance, has been the face of the Fever. Additionally, the tension in her play is evident. The ISOs, the incorrect passes, and the inability to change Clark's tempo. It's generational rather than personal. Furthermore, this is not a problem exclusive to Indiana. Every time a young star joins a team with a large number of veterans, this occurs. Ego, pride, and the fear of being surpassed or replaced are all present. Here's the unsettling reality, though. The Fever must put vision ahead of comfort if they hope to prevail. And Clark is the vision at the moment. Adapting is necessary. When she calls for the ball, she must pass. This calls for coaching rather than restraining her. It entails focusing the system on her strengths rather than pushing her to change who she is in order to conform to someone else's. Additionally, a front office must cease playing both sides. Indiana is currently caught in the midst. Attempt to capitalize on the excitement Clark creates while simultaneously appeasing its veterans. However, that is unsustainable. If you don't invest in her generational talent, you run the danger of seeing her go after her rookie contract expires. Not to mention that Clark has choices. She is already well known throughout the world. She might leave Indiana and continue to dominate endorsements, merchandising, and headlines. However, if she stays, it must be because this team was created with her in mind, not the other way around. Let's also discuss how that altercation at halftime affected the league as a whole. That video went viral as soon as it appeared on social media. Podcasts, TikTok edits, and debate shows all present various stories. Some portray Clark as an unappreciative novice who defies authority. Some refer to her as a breath of new air since she at last demanded responsibility and guidance. She did, however, move the needle once more, something no one could dispute. This is when things start to get interesting. Because that type of cultural weight entails both opportunity and responsibility. Clark is doing more than just creating the character of her team. She's redefining the conversation surrounding how women's basketball is coached, covered, and consumed. She is demonstrating that WNBA stars are capable of having ambitions, disagreements, and ideas. And that it's leadership rather than diva behavior. Consider how we report on NBA players. When Luka Doncic yells at Jason Kidd, we don't blink. We acknowledge that disagreement as a necessary component of fierce competitiveness. However, it makes headlines when Caitlin Clark follows suit. It's a scandal. It's disrespect. Clark is confronting the loud double standard. However, there will undoubtedly be opposition to that challenge. From coaches who perceive a challenge to their authority. From pundits who anticipate rookies will be thankful and quiet. From admirers who want her to stick to her own path. In actuality, though, she lacks a lane. She is constructing a roadway. The Fever are at last playing better basketball after that altercation, which is the most ironic aspect. The offense has become more relaxed. The speed has accelerated. Players are genuinely moving without the ball, and the team scores goals more effectively. It resembles a surprise. Your team is better when you have faith in your generational point guard. This is what will happen next. The Indiana Fever must have some difficult talks if they are serious about winning games, not simply tickets and clicks. They must determine whether Stephanie White is the best coach for this team's future. They must determine whether veterans who refuse to change should be a part of this core. Additionally, since nobody succeeds in limbo, they must provide Caitlin Clark with both freedom and support. Either you become the team that had her and let her go, or you empower your star. Because of Caitlin Clark's outburst at her coach, let's discuss the ripple effect. That was more than a Fever issue. The entire league received that televised alert. Coaches and general managers in WNBA locker rooms had to sit up